The parking lot was a sea of steel and glass, glinting under the sharp rays of the late morning sun. Tyler Wilson adjusted the strap of his weathered canvas bag and exhaled slowly. His reflection in the car window didn't look like the face of a multimillion-dollar CEO. It was that of an ordinary man dressed in a faded hoodie and jeans, his baseball cap pulled low. He wanted it that way. Today wasn't about power or prestige, it was about truth. As he walked toward the glass doors of his suburban electronics store, Tyler's sharp eyes caught a young couple approaching ahead of him. The man's crisp blazer and the woman's designer bag practically screamed high-value customers. At the entrance, an employee stepped forward, greeting them with a bright smile and a welcoming gesture. The warmth in the interaction tugged at a small corner of pride in Tyler's chest. This is how it should be, he thought, every customer valued. But when Tyler followed a few paces behind, the same employee glanced at him, hesitated for a beat, then turned away without a word. The pride dimmed, replaced by an unsettling flicker of doubt. Inside, the hum of activity filled the air. Rows of gadgets gleamed under artificial lights, their surfaces polished to perfection. Shoppers meandered through aisles, their chatter punctuated by the occasional laughter of children near the toy section. Tyler's eyes swept across the space, landing on the electronics counter. Behind it sat a young man slouched in his chair, scrolling lazily on his phone. His name tag read Ray. Tyler approached, picking up a pair of headphones from the counter. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but audible enough to cut through the buzz around them. Ray didn't look up. "Excuse me," Tyler repeated, holding the headphones in his hand as though considering them. Ray finally raised his eyes, barely masking his annoyance. "Yeah." Tyler held the headphones up. "Could you tell me a bit about these? Are they good for outdoor use?" Ray shrugged. "All the details are on the box." He motioned vaguely toward the small print, his gaze already drifting back to his phone. Tyler felt the weight of disappointment settle in his chest, but he smiled politely. "Right. Thanks." He set the headphones down and stepped back, his eyes lingering on Ray for a moment longer than necessary. This wasn't just inattentiveness, it was dismissiveness. And it wasn't the kind of culture Tyler had built his company on. He turned toward the aisles, deciding to observe more before drawing conclusions. As he wandered, Tyler's attention was drawn to an older woman near the home goods section. Her hands fluttered nervously over a row of blenders as she glanced around, clearly searching for assistance. She caught sight of a young employee stocking shelves nearby and approached him hesitantly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Could you help me understand the differences between these models?" The employee didn't even look up from the box in his hands. "The descriptions are all right there," he said flatly, nodding toward the labels. The woman faltered, her shoulders slumping as she turned back to the shelf. Tyler clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay silent. He stepped closer, glancing over the models and quickly explaining the differences to the woman in a low, friendly tone. Her face lit up with relief, and she thanked him profusely. Tyler watched her walk away, a tight knot forming in his stomach. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Nearby, a burst of laughter caught his attention. A young employee with a cheerful demeanor was assisting a man with a matching tie and shirt set, offering suggestions with genuine enthusiasm. The customer chuckled at her remarks, clearly appreciating the effort. Tyler nodded slightly to himself. At least someone still gets it. But as he turned back toward the electronics counter, the image of Ray slouching in his chair replayed in his mind. Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just one bad attitude. This was the first crack in a mirror that once reflected everything he stood for. He picked up a boxed set of Bluetooth speakers and approached the counter again. His movements were deliberate, his grip on the box firm. He wasn't ready to draw conclusions just yet, but what happened next would make it impossible to ignore the truth. Tyler stood in the center of the electronics aisle, the box speakers still in his hands. For a moment, he considered trying again with Ray, but the memory of the young man's dismissive shrug made him hesitate. Instead, he wandered into the home goods section, his eyes sharp, cataloging interactions as if gathering evidence for an unseen trial. To his left, a couple debated over a set of nonstick pans, their voices low but animated. To his right, a mother wrangled a toddler while balancing a coffee maker in one hand and her phone in the other. The energy of the store buzzed around him, yet Tyler felt an undercurrent of something darker, a subtle but pervasive indifference in the air. It wasn't loud or overt, but it lingered, like a faint smell you couldn't quite place. As he moved further into the store, his attention was drawn to a commotion near the customer service desk. A middle-aged man in a button-down shirt stood with his arms crossed, his face red with frustration. "I've been waiting for 10 minutes, the man said sharply, his voice rising above the noise. "Does anyone here even care?" Tyler's eyes darted to the service counter, where a young employee stood frozen, a deer caught in headlights. She fumbled with a clipboard, her words coming out in stammered apologies. Tyler frowned, his chest tightening. The situation was escalating, but no one seemed to be stepping in to defuse it. "Where's the manager?" he wondered. Before he could approach, a cheerful voice broke through the tension. "Hi there. I can help you with that," said a young woman with a bright smile as she walked up to the counter. Her name tag read Melanie, and her confident, calm demeanor immediately softened the customer's stance. Within minutes, she had not only resolved his issue, but also left him chuckling at one of her light-hearted remarks. Tyler watched her carefully, noting the way she carried herself, how she made eye contact and genuinely listened. "She's the kind of person I built this company for," he thought. Tyler lingered in the aisle, pretending to examine a blender, but his mind was elsewhere. The contrast between Melanie's professionalism and Ray's indifference gnawed at him. It was more than just a problem with individual employees. It was a symptom of something deeper. Somewhere along the line, the values Tyler had poured into his company had been diluted, stretched too thin by expansion and delegation. Have I lost touch? He wondered. Nearby, the older woman he had helped earlier reappeared, holding a box with a slightly nervous grip. She approached another employee, a young man stacking shelves, and timidly asked, "Can I check if this has a warranty?" The man didn't even pause his task. "I think it's written on the box somewhere," he said, barely glancing her way. The woman opened her mouth to respond but seemed to think better of it. She walked away slowly, her shoulders slumped. Tyler's jaw tightened as he placed the box speakers back on the shelf. He wanted to intervene, to tell the employee that this wasn't how you treated people, but he held back. Confronting the problem as an ordinary customer wouldn't fix it. He needed a bigger picture, a complete understanding of how widespread the issue was. Turning into another aisle, Tyler noticed Ray leaning against the counter again, his phone back in hand. This time, Tyler approached deliberately, letting his footsteps echo slightly on the polished floor. Ray didn't look up. "Excuse me," Tyler said, keeping his tone neutral but firm. "Could you help me find a pair of headphones with good noise cancellation?" Ray sighed heavily, finally raising his head. His expression was blank, almost bored. "The noise-canceling ones are over there." He pointed vaguely toward an aisle without bothering to make eye contact. Tyler held his ground. "Can you tell me which ones are best for outdoor use?" Ray glanced at him, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "I don't know, man. You can check the labels." Tyler studied him for a moment, his calm exterior masking the churn of frustration beneath. "All right, thanks," he said, turning away. As he walked down the aisle, Tyler caught sight of another employee chatting with a young couple. They laughed together as the employee enthusiastically demonstrated a set of wireless speakers. Tyler noted the stark difference in attitude. It wasn't just about training, it was about who cared enough to try. Stopping at the edge of the aisle, Tyler leaned against the shelf, his mind racing. He'd seen enough to know that the problem wasn't isolated. There were pockets of excellence like Melanie, but they were being overshadowed by the indifference of employees like Ray. And worse, the managers weren't stepping in to correct it. Tyler's phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him out of his thoughts. He glanced at the screen, a text from his assistant reminding him of his afternoon meeting. He ignored it, slipping the phone back into his pocket. The meeting can wait. This can't. He glanced back toward Ray, who was now laughing at something on his phone. The knot in Tyler's chest tightened. He wasn't just observing anymore. He was making a plan. Tyler moved deeper into the store, weaving through aisles that seemed both familiar and foreign. The store bore the hallmarks of his vision: sleek displays, modern layouts, and a welcoming aesthetic, but the people within it told a different story. He knew he had to dig deeper, and that meant staying quiet, invisible, and observant. Near the electronics counter, Tyler paused, pretending to study a box sound system. His ears caught a snippet of conversation just a few feet away. Two employees stood casually leaning against a shelf, their voices hushed but not enough to avoid being overheard. "Did you see that guy earlier?" One of them, Ray, muttered with a smirk. "The one in the hoodie? What's he even doing here? He looks like he walked in from a thrift store." The other employee chuckled under his breath. Yeah, probably just killing time. Bet he doesn't even know what half this stuff does. Tyler felt the words land like tiny, precise blows. He shifted slightly, ensuring he wasn't in their line of sight, and gripped the edge of the shelf to steady himself. The casual cruelty of their remarks wasn't just unprofessional, it was personal. They didn't see a customer, they saw someone unworthy of their time. He had expected lapses in service, sure, but this was a breach of basic decency. People like that never buy anything big, Ray added dismissively. I'm not wasting my time. The other employee nodded, stifling a laugh. Tyler inhaled deeply, suppressing the impulse to confront them on the spot. A scene now would solve nothing. Instead, he made a mental note of their faces and their behavior, his resolve hardening with every word they exchanged. He walked away slowly, his shoulders taut. This isn't just bad training, he thought. This is a culture problem. As Tyler wandered through the store, his attention was drawn to another interaction. A petite woman with curly brown hair, Melanie, as her name tag read, was helping an elderly man near the home goods section. The man clutched a walking cane in one hand and a small list in the other, his face etched with concentration as Melanie patiently explained the differences between two coffee makers. She smiled warmly, pointing out features and even suggesting which one might be easier for him to use. You've been so helpful, the man said, his voice wavering with gratitude. Thank you. It's no trouble at all, Melanie replied. If you need help with anything else, just let me know. Tyler observed the scene quietly, a faint sense of relief washing over him. In Melanie, he saw a reflection of the company he had once dreamed of, a place where every customer, no matter their background or appearance, felt valued. She wasn't just doing her job. She was embodying the values Tyler had built his business on. But that sense of relief was fleeting. For every Melanie, there seemed to be a Ray, and the latter were outnumbering the former in visibility and impact. Tyler clenched his jaw, the knot in his stomach tightening further. As he turned back toward the electronics section, he noticed Ray scrolling through his phone again, his expression one of complete indifference. Tyler felt a flicker of anger, but was tempered by a growing sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about one employee's behavior. Ray was a symptom of a larger issue, one that Tyler could no longer ignore. He approached the electronics counter again, this time picking up a box set of Bluetooth speakers. He placed the box gently on the counter, making just enough noise to draw Ray's attention. The young man looked up, his face blank. Can I help you? Ray asked, his tone making it clear he wasn't particularly interested in helping. Tyler smiled faintly. I'm wondering if these are good for outdoor use. Ray picked up the box, flipped it over, and skimmed the back. Yeah, it says they're weatherproof. Okay, Tyler said, nodding slowly. And are they compatible with most devices? Ray sighed audibly, setting the box down with a dull thud. Look, man, all the details are right there. You can read it yourself. The air between them seemed to grow heavier. Tyler studied Ray for a long moment, his calm exterior masking the storm brewing inside. Right, he said finally. Thanks for your time. He turned and walked away, his grip on the box tightening briefly before he set it back on the shelf. His thoughts raced, a mix of anger, disappointment, and determination swirling together. He wasn't just a CEO anymore. In that moment, he was every customer who had ever been dismissed, ignored, or judged. Before leaving the aisle, Tyler glanced back. Ray was once again absorbed in his phone, oblivious to the man he had just dismissed. He has no idea who I am, Tyler thought. But he's about to find out. Tyler paced slowly through the store, his thoughts like a restless tide, crashing and receding, but never settling. The image of Ray slouched over his phone replayed in his mind, each second sharpening the edge of his frustration. How many customers had walked out of this store, feeling the same sting of dismissal? The idea gnawed at him, pulling him deeper into an uneasy reflection of his own failures. He stopped near a display of high-end headphones and traced the edge of one of the boxes absent-mindedly. His focus wasn't on the product. It was on the faces of the employees as they moved through the store. Some wore genuine smiles, their body language open and inviting. Others moved mechanically, as though every interaction with a customer was a chore to be endured. His gaze returned to Ray, who was now leaning back in his chair, scrolling through his phone. Tyler's jaw tightened. This isn't indifference, it's contempt. Nearby, a young woman approached the counter with a small box in her hands. She hesitated for a moment, glancing at Ray before stepping forward. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Can you tell me if this comes with a warranty?" Ray didn't even bother to look up. "Should say on the box," he muttered, flicking a finger toward the packaging without pausing his scrolling. The woman blinked, clearly caught off guard by his tone. "Oh, okay," she said, stepping back awkwardly. Tyler watched as she turned away, her expression a mixture of frustration and resignation. He wanted to intervene, to say something, but he forced himself to stay silent. Not yet. Determined to test the waters further, Tyler picked up a different pair of headphones and approached the counter. His steps were measured, purposeful. He placed the box in front of Ray with a soft thud, ensuring he had the young man's attention. "Hey," Tyler began, his tone neutral but firm. "Can you help me figure out if these would work well in a noisy environment?" Ray glanced up, his expression a mixture of irritation and boredom. "Yeah, I guess," he said, flipping the box over. He scanned the back half-heartedly before handing it back to Tyler. "They should be fine." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Should be? Could you be a little more specific?" "I'm trying to make sure they'll work for me." Ray sighed audibly, leaning back in his chair. "Look, man, all the specs are right there," he said, pointing to the small print on the box. "You can just read it." Tyler held the box for a moment, studying Ray's face. There was no trace of concern, no hint of effort. It wasn't just laziness. It was complete disengagement. Setting the box down gently, Tyler nodded. "Thanks for your help," he said evenly. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of another customer, a middle-aged man, watching the interaction from a few feet away. The man shook his head slightly, his expression one of quiet disapproval. Tyler felt his frustration deepen, not just at Ray, but at the culture that had allowed this behavior to fester. Moving toward the back of the store, Tyler spotted Melanie assisting another customer. This time, it was an older woman with a cane, struggling to hold on to a large box of kitchenware. Melanie smiled warmly as she approached, gently taking the box from the woman's hands. "Here, let me get this for you," she said. "Are you sure this is the right one? I can help you check if there's a lighter model." The woman's face lit up with gratitude. "Oh, thank you, dear. That's so kind of you." Tyler paused, watching the interaction from a distance. This is what it's supposed to look like, he thought. Melanie wasn't just doing her job, she was creating an experience, making the customer feel valued. It was exactly the kind of care and attention Tyler had envisioned when he started his business. But that vision was now clouded by the stark reality of employees like Ray. Tyler's mind raced with questions. How'd I let it get this far? Where did I lose control? The answers felt just out of reach, like pieces of a puzzle scattered too far apart to form a clear picture. As Tyler made his way toward the exit, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A reminder of an upcoming meeting flashed across the display, but he dismissed it with a swipe. Whatever the meeting was, it could wait. This can't. Before leaving, Tyler stopped near the customer service desk. He caught sight of the store's manager, Jessica, speaking with another employee. Her body language was calm, professional, but there was an edge of weariness in her expression. Tyler considered approaching her, but something held him back. Not yet, he thought. I need to see more. As he walked out into the parking lot, the sun was high, casting sharp shadows across the pavement. Tyler leaned against his car for a moment, staring back at the store. He had seen enough to know that the problem was systemic, but not enough to understand the full extent of it. Climbing into his car, Tyler gripped the steering wheel tightly. His reflection in the rearview mirror stared back at him, the face of a man caught between pride and disappointment. Tomorrow, he thought, they'll see who I really am. The next morning arrived with a crisp clarity that Tyler hadn't felt in a long time. He pulled into the same parking lot, his unassuming hoodie and baseball cap in place. This time, there was no hesitation in his steps as he crossed the lot. The faint hum of determination buzzed in his chest, propelling him forward. Inside the store, the familiar sights and sounds greeted him, but his focus was razor-sharp. Customers moved between aisles, their faces a mix of curiosity and mild frustration. Employees darted about, some chatting among themselves, others pretending not to notice the occasional raised hand of a shopper seeking help. And then, as if on cue, Tyler spotted Ray back at his usual spot behind the electronics counter. Tyler took a moment to scan the store, observing how the other employees were interacting. Melanie was at the front, patiently helping an older man navigate the self-checkout, her warm smile as constant as it had been the day before. Jessica, the manager, was chatting with a younger staff member, her tone authoritative but kind. But Ray? He was leaned back in his chair, his phone propped against a display box, scrolling lazily while ignoring a young woman standing at the counter with a confused expression. Tyler's jaw tightened. It wasn't just about Ray anymore. It was about what his behavior symbolized. This moment wasn't just an opportunity to confront a single employee. It was a chance to set the tone for what his company truly stood for. He strode purposefully toward the counter, his footsteps steady and deliberate. Ray glanced up briefly, his expression flickering with a hint of recognition before settling back into indifference. "Excuse me," Tyler said, placing a boxed pair of headphones on the counter. "I'd like to ask a few questions about these." Ray sighed, as if the request were a monumental inconvenience. "Sure. What do you want to know?" Tyler held Ray's gaze, his voice calm. "I'd like to know if they're compatible with multiple devices and if they're good for outdoor use." Ray shrugged, flipping the box over. He skimmed the back, his lips pressing into a thin line. "Yeah, they're fine," he said, handing the box back with a bored expression. "Everything's listed right there." Tyler tilted his head slightly, the faintest trace of a smile on his lips. "Is that so?" Before Ray could respond, Tyler leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping just enough to carry weight. Yesterday I asked you a similar question, and I got the same answer. Dismissive, vague, and completely unhelpful. But here's the thing, you weren't just brushing off some random shopper." Ray blinked, his confusion evident. "What do you mean?" Tyler straightened, his voice rising just enough to catch the attention of the customers and employees nearby. "I'm Tyler Wilson. I own this company. And yesterday, you showed me exactly what's wrong with the culture in this store." The air seemed to freeze around them. Ray's face went pale, his posture stiffening as the weight of Tyler's words sank in. Nearby customers exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued. Melanie, who had just finished helping the man at self-checkout, stopped in her tracks, her eyes widening as recognition dawned. Jessica appeared from around the corner, her face a mixture of surprise and apprehension. "Mr. Wilson," she began, hurrying toward him, "if we'd known you were visiting." "That's the point, Jessica," Tyler said, cutting her off gently but firmly. "You weren't supposed to know. I came here as an ordinary customer to see how this store really operates. And what I saw was unacceptable." Jessica's shoulders sagged slightly, her professional composure struggling to mask her unease. "I wasn't aware there were issues," she said. "We've been doing our best to." Tyler raised a hand to stop her. "I'm not here to place all the blame on you, Jessica. This is a systemic problem, and that starts with me. Somewhere along the way, I let this culture slip. I delegated too much and trusted that the values I built this company on would hold on their own. Clearly, they haven't." He turned back to Ray, who looked as though he wished the ground would swallow him whole. "But you," Tyler said, his voice steady, "you had the choice to do better. To treat every customer with respect, regardless of who they were or how they looked. And you chose not to." Ray stammered, his words tripping over themselves. I didn't know." Tyler held up a hand. "Save it. I'm not here to humiliate you. I'm here to fix this. And that starts now." He glanced around, addressing the growing circle of employees and customers who had gathered. "This isn't about punishing one person. It's about accountability, mine, yours, all of ours. From today forward, this store and every store in this company will operate with the values I built it on. Respect, fairness, and professionalism. If anyone has a problem with that, they're free to leave." The room was silent, the weight of Tyler's words hanging in the air. Then, slowly, Melanie stepped forward. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson," she said quietly, "for caring enough to make things right." Tyler nodded, his expression softening. "Thank you, Melanie, for reminding me what this company can be." As he turned to leave, the store felt different. Quieter, more reflective. But Tyler knew this was just the beginning. Change wasn't instant, and trust wasn't automatic. But today, he'd taken the first step. And for now, that was enough. The break room was small but functional, with rows of lockers along one wall and a scattering of chairs and tables filling the center. The employees of the store had been gathered there at Tyler's request, their faces a mixture of curiosity, unease, and in some cases, outright apprehension. The buzz of the store outside felt miles away, replaced by the heavy silence that now hung in the air. Tyler stood at the front of the room, his posture calm but commanding. His hoodie and jeans no longer made him look like an ordinary shopper. They seemed to underline his authority, his presence unmistakable now that the truth of his identity had been revealed. He let the silence linger for a moment longer, ensuring he had everyone's full attention. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady but not unkind. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tyler Wilson. I'm the founder and CEO of this company." A ripple of whispers swept through the group, but Tyler didn't let it distract him. His eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on each face before continuing. "Yesterday, I came into this store as a customer, not as your boss, not as the CEO, but as an ordinary shopper. I wanted to see for myself how things were running, how our values were being upheld. And I have to be honest, what I saw wasn't what I'd built this company to be." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Several employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their expressions ranging from guilty to defensive. "I don't say this lightly," Tyler continued, "but somewhere along the way, we lost sight of what matters most, our customers. Every person who walks through those doors deserves respect, fairness, and professionalism. No exceptions. Yet yesterday, I saw a customer dismissed because of how they looked. I saw employees choosing to ignore people instead of helping them. I even overheard conversations that were outright disrespectful." His gaze flickered toward Ray, who sat in the back corner, his shoulders hunched and his face pale. Tyler didn't call him out directly, but the implication was clear. "This isn't just about one bad day," Tyler said, his tone softening slightly. "It's about a culture that I've allowed to drift. And that's on me. I take full responsibility for not staying close enough to the day-to-day operations, for not making sure that the values we started with were carried through as we grew." The room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Tyler let the moment stretch, then shifted his stance slightly, signaling a shift in tone. "But this isn't the end of the story," he said. "It's an opportunity. An opportunity for all of us to do better." He turned to Jessica, the store manager, who sat near the front. "Jessica, I know this hasn't been easy. You've done your best with the resources and support you've been given, but I want to make sure you have what you need moving forward. Starting with better training for the team and clearer expectations." Jessica nodded, a mixture of relief and determination in her expression. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I won't let you down." Tyler nodded back, then addressed the group again. "We're implementing mandatory training across every store, training on customer service, bias, and communication. This isn't a punishment. It's an investment. An investment in you, in this company, and in the people who make it possible for us to exist, our customers." He glanced around the room, gauging their reactions. Some faces were still guarded, but others showed tentative signs of understanding. Melanie, seated near the middle, offered him a small, encouraging smile. "And let me be clear," Tyler continued. "This isn't just about following rules. It's about understanding why those rules exist. It's about remembering that every person who walks through those doors has a story. They're not just numbers or sales, they're people." He took a step closer to the group, his voice lowering slightly. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone or to point fingers, but I am here to make sure that we're all accountable, myself included. If we're going to move forward, it has to be together." There was a brief pause, then a tentative hand went up. It was Melanie. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice steady but quiet. "I just want to say thank you. For noticing. For caring. It means a lot." Tyler smiled faintly. "Thank you, Melanie. For reminding me what this company can be." He turned back to the rest of the group. "Let's not waste this opportunity. Starting today, things are going to change. And I promise you, if you're willing to put in the effort, this will be a place we can all be proud of." As the meeting wrapped up, Tyler approached Ray, who lingered near the back, his expression a mixture of guilt and discomfort. "Ray," Tyler said, his tone firm but not unkind. "You've got a choice. You can learn from this, take the training seriously, and prove that you're better than what I saw yesterday. Or you can walk away. The decision is yours." Ray nodded slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do better, Mr. Wilson. I promise." Tyler nodded, offering a brief but genuine smile. "I'm holding you to that." As Tyler walked out of the break room, he felt the strange mix of exhaustion and hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was steering his company back toward the vision it was built on. The morning sun streamed through the large glass windows of the store, casting a warm, golden light on the polished floors. Tyler stood just inside the entrance, his hands in the pockets of his jacket as he observed the scene before him. The store felt different, not in its layout or merchandise, but in its energy. The tension that had been so palpable just days ago had eased, replaced by a sense of focus and purpose. Customers moved through the aisles, chatting with employees who seemed genuinely engaged. There was no hesitation in their movements, no dismissive shrugs or bored glances. Tyler's eyes scanned the familiar faces of the staff, noting the subtle but significant changes in their demeanor. At the electronics counter, Ray was speaking with an older man about a set of headphones. His posture was upright, his tone patient as he explained the features. "These have great noise cancellation," Ray said, holding up the box. "And they're compatible with most devices. If you're using them outdoors, they'll hold up well against wind and background noise." The older man nodded, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. "Thank you, young man. That's exactly what I needed to know." Ray smiled back. "Glad I could help. Let me know if you have any other questions." Tyler watched the exchange with quiet satisfaction. Ray had been one of the biggest question marks after the meeting. His behavior had been a stark example of everything wrong with the store's culture, and Tyler had given him a clear choice: change or leave. Seeing him now, Tyler felt a flicker of pride. People can change if given the chance. In the center of the store, Melanie was assisting a mother with 2 young children. She crouched to the kids' eye level, explaining how a small set of speakers worked while a mother looked on with a grateful smile. The kids giggled as Melanie let them test the speakers, the soft sound of a cartoon theme song filling the aisle. It was a simple moment, but it carried the essence of what Tyler had always envisioned for his stores: a place where people felt welcome, valued, and seen. As Tyler walked further into the store, he noticed Jessica standing near the back, clipboard in hand, speaking with another employee. Her tone was firm but encouraging, her body language confident. She caught sight of Tyler and approached him with a small smile. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice steady. "It's good to see you." "Good to see you too, Jessica," Tyler replied. "How's everything going?" She nodded. "Better. The training sessions have made a big difference. People are more aware, more engaged. It feels like we're moving in the right direction." Tyler smiled. "That's good to hear. And you? How are you holding up?" Jessica hesitated for a moment before answering. "I won't lie, it's been a challenge, but it's also been rewarding. I think we needed this wake-up call." "I know I did." Tyler placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're doing a great job. Keep it up." Jessica nodded, her confidence bolstered by his words. "Thank you. I won't let you down." As Tyler turned to leave, his path took him past the customer service desk. A familiar voice caught his attention. "Thank you so much for your help," said the elderly woman he had noticed during his initial visit, the one who had been dismissed by an employee before Tyler stepped in to assist her. She was speaking to Melanie, who stood behind the counter with her usual warm smile. "It's no trouble at all," Melanie replied. "If you ever need anything else, just let us know." The woman turned, her eyes landing on Tyler. A spark of recognition lit up her face, and she approached him slowly. "You're the man who helped me the other day," she said, her voice kind but firm. Tyler nodded. "I am." Her expression softened. "I don't know if I ever got the chance to properly thank you. You didn't have to step in, but you did. And I won't forget that." Tyler smiled, his voice quiet but sincere. "It was the least I could do." The woman reached out and patted his arm gently. "Whatever changes you're making here, they're working. Don't stop." As she walked away, Tyler stood for a moment, letting her words sink in. They weren't just about him. They were about everyone in the store who had chosen to step up, to be better, to rebuild the trust that had been lost. Tyler left the store with a sense of pride and purpose, the sun warm on his face as he stepped into the parking lot. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but today had shown him that change was possible. It was never too late to course correct, to realign with the values that mattered most. As he got into his car and started the engine, Tyler glanced back at the store through the rearview mirror. For the first time in a long time, he didn't see just a business, he saw a community. And that was worth everything.